Greetings and salutations, one and all. Welcome to the night shift to DJ Kevin Stew. It's a brand new week right here on the night shift. Tonight we kick off the thing we call community and finance. How you doing? Each and every one of you? Hope you're feeling good. Hope you had a great weekend. How was your Mother's Day?
Girl, if you're ready, let me know. No set a long talking where you for. Wine to the ground, y'all drop to the floor. Woyo. Well, if you're ready, let me go. Start up the countdown, time for the show. If that's where you want, take one for the road. No, but think anything now. Don't take it personal. It's just a one night job. Don't make it personal. No. I hope you understand. Don't take it personal. It's just a one night job. Just get to work, my girl. Don't make it personal. Way you action, thunder. The way you move your body make me wonder. Show me that you wanna take it all the way. Oh yeah, don't play, run down. You know you can get it if you want that. Girl, if you're ready, drop it down for me. So if you're ready, let me know. No set a long talking where you for. Wine to the ground, y'all drop to the floor. Woyo. Well, if you're ready, let me go. Start up the countdown, time for the show. If that's where you want, take one for the road. No, I think anything now. Don't take it personal. It's just a one night job. Don't make it personal. No. I hope you understand. Don't take it personal. It's just a one night job. Just get to work, my girl. Don't make it personal. Come put that work on it. Come put that work on it. We only need one night. Come put that work on it. Come put that work on it. Just show me what you like. Let me see you do it like you mean it. We don't even have to catch feeling. Everybody need a little company. Sometimes we just gotta keep it on the down low. Love it when you move it in slow-mo. Why you playing shy, girl? Come to me. So if you're ready, let me go. No set a long talking where you for. Wine to the ground, y'all drop to the floor. Woyo. Well, if you're ready, let me go. Start up the countdown, time for the show. If that's where you want, take one for the road. No, I think anything now. Don't take it personal. It's just a one night job. Don't make it personal. No. I hope you understand. Don't take it personal. It's just a one night job. Just get to work, my girl. Don't make it personal.
The sound of 5-star Akil.
So if you're ready, let me.
It's called Personal.
Long talking where you for. Wine to the ground, y'all drop to the floor.
I want to officially welcome each and every one of you to the broadcast.
There we go. Start up the countdown, time for the show. If
I
that
want to say thanks to the affiliates,
no, I think anything now. Don't
those locked in on the night shift to DJ Kevin Stew on TuneIn Radio,
everybody need a little company. Sometimes
those locked in on One Harmony Radio out of the UK. Top of the morning to you guys in the UK.
why you playing shy, girl? Come
Big ups to those on NIE Radio in New Jersey,
there we go. No set a long talking.
those on Island Worldwide out of New York.
Woyo.
Big ups to you.
Well, if you're ready, let me go.
Big ups to those on WGLRO out of Texas,
Where you want, take one.
the People Station, home of the Donna Walker Morning Show, taking you from the sheets to the streets.
It's just a one night job. Don't make
I
it.
want to say big ups to Oliwap Radio and Dusik Media Groups.
It's just a
Truly appreciate love you.
get to work, my girl. Don't make it.
Much love to ClintonLindsay.com, the Foundation Radio Network.
Sometimes
Big ups to those who are locked in on Facebook Live.
love it when you move it in slow-mo.
Remember, it's only a segment simulcast, just a segment of the broadcast. So use the link.
Let me go.
Yeah, use the link in the description, kevinstew.com, for those of you who don't know. The home of the night shift, where you're encouraged to have acceptance through enlightenment.
one for the road. No, I think anything.
You get to watch and listen live. Those of you looking for the TuneIn link, you can go to kevinstew.com and also get connected with TuneIn through there.
Don't take it personal. It's just a one night job.
Inviting to call a friend, tell a friend, friends of your friends, enemies of your friends, friends of your enemies. Call everybody. Tell them it's the night shift to DJ Kevin Stew, Community and Finance Night. And before we get into the meat of the matter, I want to say thank you to my segment. Actually, I want to say thanks to all my sponsors, because we won't even be taking a break. We'll be talking and going through. Thank you to Pulse Media Group. When being in the moment is priceless for innovative streaming and recording solutions. You can give them a call, 754-999-6020. You have a service, a church service, a conference, wedding, funeral, party, graduation. You want to stream it live on a secure platform? Go ahead and give them a call. Just like you see right here on kevinstew.com. They can get you hooked up, yeah? I want to say thank you to Althea and her Healing Heavenly Hands. Althea SU is a licensed massage therapist that comes to you operating out of Broad County, North Miami-Dade and South Palm Beach counties. She brings her table, she brings her oils, over 20 years of experience, and she comes to you COVID-free and would love to leave that way. If you have the virus, don't call her. Otherwise, you can schedule your appointment. 954-655-9000. That's 954-655-9000. And you can email her at thealater@att.net. While you're calling her, you can ask her about personal training. She's also certified as a personal trainer. Get your personalized service and your massage after she puts you in pain. What more could you ask for? I want to say thank you to Reggae Global Entertainment. Reggae Global act as your booking agents, handle your tour management, take care of your copyrights, publishing, trading, trademarks, business registration, legal service referrals, music production, marketing and promotion, and so much more. Give them a call, 954-804-8199, between the hours of 10 a.m. and 7 p.m. Eastern. Or you can check them out, reggaeglobalentertainment.com. And thank you to GMAT Music Solutions, providing sound, light and stage production services, musical equipment, PA systems, audio engineers, DJs, bands, musicians, singers, and more. Give them a call, 754-307-GMAC. That's 754-307-4622. Or you can check them out online, gmatmusicsolutions.com. That's GMAC Music Productions. Sorry, Music Solutions. Speaking things into being here. Okay, so that takes care of the formalities. Sarge, you ready? Sarge, you there? I'm not hearing you. Sarge, you there? Okay, hold on. I know what is going on. Okay. Alright, you hearing me now? You hearing me again?
I can hear you perfectly. Can you hear me?
Okay, you're right. No, I can hear you through the system. I wasn't hearing you clearly before, but I can hear you clearly now. Ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, I present to you the man of the moment. Joining us tonight, courtesy of the Lauderhill Police Department, the one and only, introducing to you for the first time anywhere. I don't know about other places, but the first time on the night of the DJ Kevin Stew, representing the Lauderhill Police Department tonight, I present to you Sergeant Torrance Gary. Or is it Gary? It's Gary, right?
Correct, correct,
It's
correct.
Gary. Yeah, it's Sergeant
Yes,
Torrance
sir.
Gary.
Thank
Oh,
you, thank you, thank you for
boy,
having me.
this is a loud audience. Look at them clapping real loud. All right, so Sarge, welcome to the broadcast. Welcome, welcome, welcome.
Thank you again for having me. I greatly appreciate, the opportunity here to be able to, open up this platform tonight. So thank you again.
It's a pleasure to have you, man. Um, and just know that the second Monday of each month belongs to you guys at Lauderhill Police Department. So, whenever you feel like you should be the one to present, not a problem. Just say, "Hey, LT, is it my turn? Put me in, coach."
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
All right. So, Sarge, tell us a little bit about yourself before we get down deep into this.
Okay, perfect. I can tell you that I've been with the city of Lauderhill for approximately 12 years now. And I started out in the community as a community youth programmer.
Mm-hmm.
And with that, I created programs for at-risk youth, all the way up to, the straight A student.
All right.
So a lot of those um, programs consisted of community engagement, political activism, getting out, learning financial literacy. So it was, targeted at the youth to get them one involved in their community, and then also, to help them learn and grow and become productive citizens in the community. From that point forward, I was there for about 7 years doing that. I decided I wanted to join the police department and move over into law enforcement. And I've been now with the Lauderhill Police Department for approximately 5 years. So that gives me my 12-year tenure there at the city.
Mm.
And during that time, I've worked the road patrol, worked night shift and day shift, Alpha Bravo. I've also been assigned to the Detective Bureau, and I've investigated everything from your criminal mischiefs and grand thefts all the way up to your aggravated battery, shootings, stabbings, homicides, you name it. And I was recently, in the last year and a half, promoted to the rank of sergeant, and now I'm back on the road patrol, and I'm assigned to the Bravo shift, which is the day shift.
Okay. Congratulations on the promotion.
Thank you again. I appreciate that, sir.
Not a problem. All right. So you've been doing this policing thing for a little while.
Yes, sir.
Um, looking at your picture, it's like straight out of high school kind of a thing. Like everyone that comes on this broadcast seems to be young. I don't know. It's a thing. It must be a thing. Um, but you look like, yeah, you said you've been in this for over a decade, and
Correct. I've been serving the city for 12 years now.
yeah, and look like just over 2 decades old, but coming.
That's a good thing. That's a
Yeah,
good
that's a
thing,
good
sir.
thing. It is a good thing because it shows that you're not that stressed out. And
I try not to be. I try not to be at all.
right, and we know policing is not one of those things that is a walk in the park.
No, not at all. I definitely can't say it's a walk in the park, but I mean the city is good, and when you work in a place and you do something that you love,
Hmm.
it's not something that necessarily is stressful or cumbersome. It's something that you enjoy, and I enjoy helping people, and that's why I started out with the city, you know, 12 years ago, helping in the community as a program manager, and then moved into law enforcement. And a lot of my experiences early in my career helped me to where I am now as a law enforcement, where I have that connection with the community. I'm able, to have those bonds that it may take some other officers a little bit longer to kind of generate in their tenure. But because I was able to start out working in the community and getting to know the people where I work,
Right.
it made it that much easier. When I moved over into law enforcement.
Uh, you know that seems to be like the formula to use for policing, being already involved in the community and then going to work for the community in that respect.
I believe so. I definitely believe so.
Yeah, I don't think a lot of people recognize the serve in the protect and serve part of policing. And in the news lately, there has I guess the question has been, who exactly are they serving? They being the police. You know, with
It always has to be the community first. You got to put the community first. That's what we're there to do, and it's to protect lives in the community. And you have to put the community first. If that's not the forefront of what you're doing, then you're absolutely doing it wrong.
well, you know, when you look at the news and what has hit the news lately with policing over the last few years actually, but more so in the last 2 3 years with social media blowing up the way it has. People reporting more through social media. There's more negative than you find positive. And recently, the big news recently was the George Floyd, Derek Chauvin trial for the George Floyd death. And then there are several other cases that involve policing, and the police officers just looked so much like villains compared to every other time. Or it seems like the only time police actually make it into the news is when they're doing something quote unquote wrong. And some of these cases, I don't know if it's just a matter of, boy, it's just an unfortunate situation. But then you look at an army lieutenant being pulled over, pepper sprayed, and harassed. And you go back, you dig through into the archives, and you come across a Philando Castile that was sitting in his car reaching for his wallet to present his ID and getting shot and killed. And the list goes on, and people are posting various videos, painting the police in a bad light, defund the police, and all these things going on. So, fortunately for me and those who that follow the night shift to DJ Kevin's Stew, we get to interact with a police department that has not been in the news in that way. We get to hear from officers that are truly serving the community. And if there's one thing that I can't stress enough, is how many times I've heard of police officers from Lauderhill serving the community and the community appreciating that. I keep talking about the one police officer retirement service or celebration that I went to, Debbie Banner. And
Okay.
this being pretty much a sold out event in City Hall. It was crazy. And
It says a lot. Definitely.
exactly, it does say a lot. And all the officers that I've met from coming out of the Lauderhill community, and I don't live in Lauderhill, but all the officers that I've met coming out of the Lauderhill community seem to be well into what happens in the community. They've been very involved. They've been very concerned. I don't know if it's Chief Stanley's way of managing the police department or what, but y'all seem to have that love for the community. And you said where it started with you working in the community as a community manager, project manager.
Correct.
So that you've always been serving the community. So tonight specifically, now I want to look at the tough subjects or the tough subject areas of apprehension and use of force. Uh,
Okay.
Big ups to those who are joining in. Again, you guys can participate in this conversation also. 773-789 Stu gets you in touch. 773-789-7839. You can call, you can text, you can WhatsApp, you can Telegram. Preferably, I'd want you to jump into the stew pot on kevinstew.com. Others call it a chat room, but because we're fancy over here on kevinstew.com, it's a stew pot. It's where we keep things interactive and bubbling. Yeah, we're fancy. So come on in. You can remain anonymous and post your questions. We're talking, we're interacting, we're learning tonight. Those of you on Facebook Live, use the link in the description. Come on over to kevinstew.com. Bobby, big ups to you. Cujo, much love. So, Sarge,
Yes, sir.
when it comes to apprehension and use of force, the two seem to kind of go hand in hand. Whereas if there's some resistance being met, the thought pattern is some sort of force is going to be used. But when you guys are being taught about apprehending a suspect, isn't there some do's and don'ts that
Okay.
you're given?
We can definitely talk about it, and I think it's important that we talk about it. You know,
Mm,
especially when it comes to uses of force and arrest and how that procedure goes and how it works.
yeah.
First thing first, communication is key. You have to have communication,
Mm-hmm.
and that's both on the officer's part and also, the citizen's part, and understanding, each other. You have to understand your audience. So I would say the first thing that you need to do is verbalize what's going on so that everyone in the situation has a clear understanding of what's going on.
Okay.
If there's a situation where an arrest is going to be made where, you have to uphold the law and there's no decision, to go another way, whether it's to, write a NTA, which is a notice to appear,
Mm-hmm.
or give some kind of diversionary program. If an arrest has to be made, the officer has to verbalize to the citizen, "Hey, look, this is what is going on. This is the reason why you're under arrest at this time, and these are the charges, that you're looking at." Also, during that process, if the officer is going to speak to the citizen in reference to that arrest and get any kind of statements from the citizen, they need to read Miranda and make sure
Mm.
that the citizen clearly understands what that means, that they do have the right not to answer any questions or speak to the police if they do not feel, at that time without a lawyer being present, comfortable with that situation. They have, the opportunity to wait to have the lawyer present in order to speak about the case. And I encourage anyone, especially when I was a detective,
Mm-hmm.
to give me their side of the story, because sometimes that changes the entire situation. Because just because you're getting, this allegation from, let's say, a victim in the case, it doesn't necessarily mean that that was the intent of whoever the suspect was in that case or the defendant was in that case. So I always encourage, individuals to give me their side of the story, whether good, bad, or indifferent, and it also humanizes the situation where if you did make a mistake and you own it, at the
Mm-hmm.
end of the day, these interviews are recorded with video and audio, and at a later time, whoever it is at the state's attorney's office or a judge would be able to hear and see the findings and the facts of this case, and also hear your point of view and your side of it. So it also gives you an opportunity, like I said, to explain yourself, but also humanize if you did make a mistake. Hey, this is what I did, and unfortunately this was the the end result of it, but I understand that I did something wrong, and I'm able to accept those consequences, whatever it is that comes forward after the fact. But you're basically cleaning the slate at that point.
Mm-hmm.
um and again, like I said, communication is 100% what you have to have in that situation, because the last thing that we want to do as law enforcement is take away someone's freedom. So I mean, that's like the end of the road in a scenario that, hey, look, this is what we have to do based upon what the law says and what we have to enforce and do our job. But that's not necessarily, the first tool in the belt to say, just, hey, I'm just going to arrest somebody.
But
So
but even with
go ahead.
showing up, sorry, even with showing up and giving your side of the story, given that so you show up, you get a call about me doing something to someone else,
Okay.
and I decide I am not saying a word without a lawyer or my lawyer present.
Okay.
Doesn't that automatically make it seem like, whatever you're being told is right, and as such, I deserve to be detained?
Well, being detained and being arrested is two different things. In a criminal
Gotcha.
investigation, if an officer responds and they have reasonable suspicion, and reasonable suspicion is described. Can you hear me still?
Yeah, I'm still hearing you.
Okay. So that reasonable suspicion is described as, an officer being able to articulate that a crime has been committed,
Hmm.
is being committed, or is about to be committed. So at that point in time, an officer can detain you in efforts to further that investigation and figure out, what has transpired. At that time, it doesn't mean that you're under arrest. Just means that you're not free to leave until the officer has basically, investigated this case and checked off all the boxes to say, okay, this is, a crime that has been committed by this particular individual,
Hmm.
or it's not, necessarily what's been given to the officer, the allegation. And then from there, the officer, is attempting to develop that probable cause to say that, all of the facts and the totality of the circumstances that's presented to the officer leads them to believe that this individual did commit this particular crime. At that point in time, then someone would be under arrest. But like I said
Gotcha.
again, being detained, and being arrested is two totally different, things. And without speaking, you don't have to do that. Like I said again, it's your right. So is it in your best interest too? If let's just say you did not do this and you wanted to explain yourself, 100%, but it's still your choice. If you wanted to wait for your attorney, that's still your choice as well. So, like I said again, that the verbalization and the communication and explaining everything to whoever the citizen may be, whether they're the victim and or the suspect in the case, is what's needed. Because without having that proper education, you may feel like, hey, this officer is just taking this person aside, or hey, I'm being arrested without being given the benefit of the doubt or anything. And the
Hmm.
officer, they have to collect evidence in the case. There has to be specific facts and evidence present in order for that officer to make an arrest.
Right.
Can't just make an arrest based upon one person's word.
So,
So go ahead.
no, go ahead. Finish your thought.
So, with that being said, like I said, if you decide to speak in that situation, it could work out in your favor. Where, hey, the officer now sees, okay, this person who gave this allegation, it's not matching up. It's not consistent with what's present as far as evidence, whether it be video or physical evidence, or
Hmm.
something left on a scene or something like that. So
Okay.
you wanna verbalize, especially if you know, like, hey, look, nah, I didn't do this. Now, if you did do the crime, maybe it may not be in your best interest to talk at that time. Maybe you may want to wait for an attorney to tell them, hey, to tell you, hey, say this and don't say that. So, I mean,
So, and
like I
that
said again,
comes.
it just depends on the situation.
Okay. So does that come before or after the Miranda rights are read?
Well, once you're in a place where you're not free to leave, and a law enforcement officer is asking you questions that may incriminate you.
Yes.
So that could even be at a point of just simply being detained, not under arrest at that point.
Mm-hmm.
You could just be detained, and if the officer is asking you incriminating questions, hey, you know, that will further this investigation and potentially lead to an arrest, yes, you have to be read Miranda, or else anything that you say cannot be used against you in a court of law unless that is, verbalized and read to you and that you understand it.
Okay, so going to this comment here in the stew pot.
Okay.
Is it really recommended to converse with a police officer without a lawyer when you affirm that you did something, you are guilty? Am I wrong here? And
Again, that goes back to a personal preference.
yeah,
If you want to speak to the officer and tell them, hey, this is what happened in this case, you are more than free to do that. If you do not want to speak to the officer, you also have that right. So there's no right or wrong answer to that. It's totally up to you. And again, like I said, especially if you know you didn't do something,
right.
it may be in your best interest to speak to the officer and let them know, hey, this is what really transpired, or this is how it happened, and you may be justified in whatever you did in that particular case, but it just depends, on the totality of the circumstances that you're looking at. So, I mean, everyone kind of handles that differently. Some people, they will not talk to you without having an attorney present, which
Right.
is fine. And some individuals, they will speak to you without that attorney present.
So, um, and that's a good point, Bobby. He says it's amazing how people talk themselves into criminal activities, or talk themselves into appearing to have done something criminal. Have you found that to be the case on any occasion yourself?
Um, in the cases that I investigated as a detective, I will tell you there's, times where individuals may not understand, let's say, a question that you're
Mm-hmm.
asking them, and they may answer it in a way that may appear as though they've committed a crime or did something that
Gotcha.
they shouldn't. And I think it's prudent upon you as a law enforcement officer, and especially as a good detective, to continue to ask questions so that you're making sure that you're receiving, the right information that they're putting out. The same way that, you're asking the questions in a way that's, I wouldn't say necessarily tricking someone, or it has to be not necessarily simplistic, but it has to be in a form that they can understand. You have to know your audience. So if you're asking a question that the person does not understand and they're giving you an answer that doesn't align with what you're asking, you may need to rephrase that question so that you're getting the correct information, that they're putting out the correct information as well.
But that kind of gets a little bit tricky when individuals are not really aware of how they're answering a question. One, like you said, and two, isn't this where now a bit of experience comes into play with the officer doing the arrest? Because if it's a let's say a first year patrol officer called to the scene of an incident, not
Mm-hmm.
saying it's a scene of a crime, an incident, and with asking questions, now perceives that the answer that is given paints a picture of criminal activity. And then someone who is a little bit more seasoned, like yourself, now comes on the scene, asks the very same question, and because of your experience, it's a different interpretation of the information. So with the first officer not being as experienced, that person could end up getting arrested.
Well, in a situation like that, I would definitely say that I can tell you when I was a rookie officer,
Yeah.
the officers that were my partners, which were more seasoned than me, they would be on scene, and I would ask them questions. If I didn't, completely understand something,
Yeah.
I would refer back to them and ask them questions. So I also push that on the officers that work with me on my squad that, hey, look, if you don't know something, then you need to do your research, and you also need to ask questions. You need to play these scenarios in your head and ask questions to the officers who've been here for a while, and or contact your supervisor.
Mm.
And whenever an arrest is made in our agency, I can tell you, and I don't know if this is true for every other agency, but for the Lauderhill Police Department, a supervisor signs off on that probable cause affidavit. So they're reading the the facts of that case and making sure that it aligns with the charges that's being presented by the officer. So if it
Gotcha.
doesn't align, then the supervisor is reading through that and saying, hey, no, this doesn't make sense with what you have. So a lot of
Mm.
the times, if it's a newer officer, they will probably give you that call and
Yes.
say, hey, Sarge, I have this that I'm dealing with. And then you start running them through the questions, you start running them through different things. And if need be, then you're out there on the scene, especially with a newer officer. You may just respond out to a call that he's making or she's making an arrest on, or there potentially may be an arrest on, just to make sure that everything is being done by policy and procedure. So, officers are continuously learning. This is a job that's always evolving
Right.
because, the law is constantly changing.
Yes.
So you have to stay abreast of your legal updates and, current law. You never can know enough, and you never know everything. So you always have to lean on that research. I'm very big on research. So if you don't necessarily have it, on like Johnny on the spot on top of your head,
Yeah.
you go and sit down in your car and open up your statute book and you read. So
Oh.
I'm very big on that.
Okay. So in the process of detaining someone with a possibility of arrest, you can go ahead and refer to your basically your operating manual.
Yes, the Florida State statute book.
Yes.
That has every single law that's on the books here in the state of Florida. That's open to the public as well. So, if you want to just pick up one of those books and read up on, hey, what are, the statutes for, let's just say, a theft
Hmm.
or a robbery or anything, it outlines these are the facts that must be present in order for this charge to basically, go forward and have probable cause for an arrest. So, like I said again, if there's an officer that's unsure of something, or hey, I have these things in front of me, and I'm like, hey, if you don't know that for a fact, 100%, then you need to read your statute book, and you can read it right there on site because if you have a partner there, that partner can be standing by with the individuals
Hmm.
on the scene while you're looking through that legal book there. So all the time. I'm always stressing that because you have to know, you're legal. You have to know it.
It's interesting that you say that, because I guess because of how we're conditioned, because of TV shows and movies, the belief of Joe Public is that the officers should know what they're doing and the officers should know the law. So if there's an officer that it's referring to a book on what to do as the situation is unfolding, the perception is they don't know what they're doing, and now the level of respect that is being meted out to that particular officer ends up being lessened, and that in and of itself could possibly cause for a real uncomfortable situation. Um,
I understand what you're saying, but I think at the same time we're called to wear so many different hats
yeah.
on our job. I mean, you come in and some days you're a counselor, the next day you're a nurse or a doctor. Performing CPR on somebody trying to save their life. You're going out there and you're enforcing the law, so you have to know the legal. And there's so many statutes, there's so many laws. It's impossible for someone to cram every single thing into their head. the
Hmm.
the basics, the ones that you see pretty much every day or every month,
Right.
you're gonna know those off the top of your head just because you know your job.
Right.
But at the same token, we're talking about a new officer, so someone new, fresh out of the academy, and on basic training, they're learning. So when you come out of the academy, you're learning. You're learning a lot. You're learning how to do your job. You're learning, the operations, the procedures. So it's a huge learning curve when it comes to being an officer. And again, like I said, you never shy away from researching and knowing, you're legal. You have to continuously read and keep yourself updated. And definitely, if you don't read the state statutes, then you won't know what you're doing.
Right.
So, reading a book, even if it's on scene, I would never discourage an officer from doing that, because I would rather you be informed, and even if it's informed in that moment, than making a false arrest or an arrest that shouldn't be made because you just went off of what you thought. So knowing your legal is huge.
What
So
what about a the citizen at that point in that situation asking the officer to then to refer to that manual? Would you
as
recommend
far
something like that? As the situation is unfolding, and the that individual, that citizen is saying, but I don't believe this is how this is supposed to go. Um, could you please refer to your manual and tell me how this goes for sure? Was that
Of
something that you'd
course, I
recommend
mean,
to a
like
citizen?
again, if someone in a situation is versed in the law, and they're asking, hey, this doesn't sound right. This sounds, you know, like it's not matching up with what you're telling me here, and
Mm-hmm.
they wanted to either request a supervisor on scene to explain it further, or someone who's more versed, by all means, because like I said again, the last thing you will want is for someone's freedom to be taken away from them unjustly. So even in that situation, there's times where an officer may pull over, let's say, a lawyer.
Yeah.
So in that situation, you're probably going to be, told, hey, look, I know this and I know that. So the officer, you gotta know your stuff. You have to know your
Mm.
stuff. So I would never discourage anyone from saying, hey, if this doesn't match up and they know what they're talking about, okay, let's talk about it. But in a respectful way. It always has to be respectful.
Right.
Never, something that's in a place where it comes to a place of aggression or anything like that, because that would obviously lead into next to what we're talking about as far as the use of force.
Right.
So, again, it's all about having respect on both sides and communication. Communication is key.
I want to jump off Facebook right now. Those of you locked in on Facebook Live, use a link and come on over to kevinstew.com for the remainder of the broadcast. So, another comment here in the stew pot, where Heritage Bobby is saying, the comment suggests that if you do not cooperate, you are guilty. Isn't this a shortcoming of the justice system? Rich people wait for a lawyer, poor people try to talk their way out. So that now talks or points in the direction of classes, and different classes of people will operate differently. I guess I would dare to go further and say it's a matter of knowledge and knowledge of the law. He goes on to say, I've been around officers for a few years, and arrest is not the first thing on their mind. They're out to help. So
Correct.
this now speaks to quite a bit of what you were saying, Sarge, where it relates to opening up the lines of communication and getting information to better assess the situation.
Of course. And, like I said, again, it's about communication. We're taught to de escalate situations. So when I walk in a room, if there's someone that's, loud and being very, very verbal, I'm
Mm-hmm.
not coming into that room and, trying to be on their level or trying to top their level.
Mm.
I'm going in that room to de-escalate the situation
Yeah.
and to calm it down. And I may even be talking a lot lower than the person who's, the loudest in the room, because now they have to quiet themselves down in order to hear what I'm saying.
Right.
So it's very much so about communication on all levels, and how you do that. Semantics. You have to, know how to use that term. That tone,
Right, right,
and the way that you use your wording, the words that your word choice, your diction. When you're talking to people, you have to be respectful. Just because you're wearing a gun and a badge and a uniform doesn't, make you above anybody else, or make it to a point where you can't just talk to someone and have, a regular conversation. You
right.
have to have emotional intelligence, and you have to know your audience. You have to know the community that you're serving. 100%.
I love how you keep coming back to the community you're serving, because ultimately that's a big part of what you do as police officers. You serve the community. So now, in let's say here it is a situation where, yes, the person that you're speaking to in this situation, it's a matter of, yes, this person needs to be arrested. So now we're coming to the how that is to happen. And
Okay.
if the individual, and I'm gonna go straight to it, the individual is deciding, hey, you're here to arrest me and I don't want to be arrested.
Okay. We can definitely talk about that as well. So, let's first talk about the different levels of resistance that a suspect can present to an officer.
Mm-hmm.
So there is passive resistance, which is simply an individual refusing to comply with an officer's orders,
Mm-hmm.
um, refusing to take his hands out of his pockets or take his hands from behind his back. Those are passive resistance levels there.
Right.
Then you have active resistance, which is going to be that tensing, pushing, pulling, preventing an officer from establishing control over the subject.
Mm-hmm.
Then you have aggressive resistance, which is resistance that can be an attacking movement, creating a boxing stance, swinging at an officer, trying to punch him, kick him, anything along those lines. Something that's going to cause injury but may not cause death or great bodily harm.
Mm-hmm.
And then you have deadly force resistance, which is, an attacking motion that has the capability of causing death or great bodily harm to that officer, whether that's, presenting a weapon, firing a weapon, moving towards an officer with a weapon, using a vehicle as a weapon. Those are just some examples
Right.
there. And then there's three levels of resistance three levels of control or response that the officer has to these four levels of resistance, which is going to be physical control,
Mm-hmm.
and that's uh, takedowns, any kind of techniques that give you leverage over the subject without using any kind of weapons, just using basically your body motion and hands.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Then you have non-lethal weapons, which we've seen in the news, the taser,
Right.
expandable batons, those type of things, or chemical agent sprays.
Pepper spray.
And
Yeah.
then, of course, there's deadly force, and that's the use of a firearm, and which could cause death or great bodily harm.
Right.
Okay.
Okay. So is there when at what point do you apply these methods of force or these levels of force in making an arrest where there is resistance? Because all right, so we know in the Dante Wright case where for whatever reason he is getting back into his car to leave, and this officer, though she says mistakenly, pulls her gun instead of her taser and shoots him. So here you have a situation like that. He's getting into his car. Does that fall under deadly force resistance or just resistance?
So if he was using that vehicle to come at an officer, then that would constitute deadly force.
Mm-hmm.
If he's re-entering that vehicle to flee, then no, that wouldn't be deadly force resistance. You'd be a situation there
Mm-hmm.
of active and or possibly maybe some kind of aggressive, depending on how that vehicle or how he gets into the vehicle, whether he punched the officer first and then jumped into the vehicle and fled, or if he just ran away from the officer and then got into the vehicle. You have active or aggressive, but if he used the vehicle in an effort to, let's say, run over or an officer or another member of the public, then
Right.
you would be looking at a deadly force situation there. When effecting an arrest, you could see that level of resistance go, like you said, from a point of someone just simply saying, "Hey, I don't want to go," and they're just resisting what the officer is telling them to do. Hey, take your hands out of your pockets, take your hands from behind your back, being passive,
Yes.
to a place of once the officer says, okay, well, put your hands behind your back, and they're physically controlling the particular subject, to a place of, hey, I'm going to tense and I'm going to pull and push away from you. There you go, active, to a place of aggressive, saying, hey, I'm going to take a swing at an officer. I'm going to, try to punch him, kick him, whatever it is, try to get into this fight,
Mm-hmm.
all the way up to presenting, you know, deadly force to that officer. And it doesn't necessarily mean that they have to have a weapon in that case. I mean, they could try to disarm the officer and take their weapon.
Right.
So there's different levels, like I said again, of that resistance. Now, an officer can respond to these situations based upon those three parameters that we have. There's no other means of response to resistance, and it would be either that physical control,
Mm-hmm.
and you have to look at the totality of the circumstances again. When you're going through this split second decision that you're making, is this resistance that's being presented to me, is this warranted of deadly force? Is this something that you could use a non-lethal weapon for, or is it something that you could just physically control the individual? If you're talking about, let's say, an officer who is 5 foot tall,
Mm-hmm.
100 pounds, against a 6'2", 300-pound person,
Yeah.
just that person presenting some kind of aggression and then now swinging at that officer could result into something that could be deadly force, because they probably could cause some kind of serious or bodily harm to the officer just in a fight.
Right. Right.
So again, it's about using all the resources that you have available to you, knowing not to respond to a call where there's let's say a domestic incident and you're responding as a solo officer. By policy that you need to wait for backup in that type of situation, because you're going to more than likely have two parties on scene.
Right.
So as a
Right.
single officer trying to get in the middle of two people, it could turn very bad for you. So you have to use the resources that you have. You have to verbalize, and a lot of the times it may be just that verbal judo of
Mm.
talking to somebody and talking them down, de-escalating them before it has to come to a place of you even having to use physical control. I've had situations that I can talk about personally where I walked in a situation and there's someone there that is on 100. They're
Mm.
ready to fight everybody. They're
Yeah.
upset. They're mad. And you're like, hey, look, this person is probably going to go to jail because they violated the law. But it's all in how you talk to them. It's all about how you deal with the situation. You humanize it, and you make this person understand, hey, look, this is what's going on, and this is why it's going on. You'll have people say, look, it is what it is. And I've had people, honestly, and I kid you not, on the way to jail, thanking me for taking them out of that situation, because they know that they probably would have did something a lot worse had we not come in there and stopped it. And they're like, hey, you know what? I thank you for treating me the way that you did and giving me the respect that you did, even though I made a mistake in this particular situation. And again, they're like, if I ever see you in the community, I want to give you a thanks. I've had people come up to me literally after the fact, seeing
Mm-hmm.
them in the community, and shake my hand. Thank you for taking the time out to treat me the way that you did, even though I made, a mistake. And thank you for talking to me and giving me that education. So
So that
it's all in how you respond and how you treat people.
so
100%.
in that case, well, that is different when it comes to someone who is I guess not on edge. What we have seen apparently in the news as it relates to police officers lately is apparently these officers being on edge when their first course of action involves wrestling someone to the ground or pulling their service firearm or even holding someone on the ground for an extended period of time, as we saw with George Floyd. There's a video that I saw recently of a man in a park in California, I'd like to say. And whereas it seems like there's a bit of a it should have been a bit of a mental health call. This individual is in the park and he seems to be talking to himself, not bothering anybody though, not threatening anybody. But the cops were called. The cops came along, starting to talk with him, asking him to identify himself, asking him for ID. He didn't have any, and they're saying, "Okay, so we're gonna have to take you in if you don't have any ID." And so they started to put handcuffs on him, and clearly this guy is in some sort of a state of mental distress, whether it was because he was drinking, because I think there was some alcohol involved, or just stress. But he seems to be saying things that doesn't quite add up in the situation. And he's a bigger guy, and they're trying to put handcuffs on him, and they wrestle him to the ground, and they put handcuffs on him. But while having him on the ground with the handcuffs on, he is still face down on the ground. Now, as it relates to putting on the cuffs, detaining someone that way, making that arrest, at what point do you say, all right, now we have control over this situation? How do we move from here? Do we now take the person out of this position that they're in and put them somewhere else? Do we restrain them in another form, in another way? How then does it move when it comes to the Lauderhill Police Department? How do you guys get told to operate in that situation? You have to take someone down, put the cuffs on them. How does that play out?
I would tell you we're trained, and this starts in the academy, and reference to positional asphyxia,
Mm-hmm.
and we understand that if someone is on their chest, if they're on their stomach, it's a lot harder to breathe, and especially if you've been in a situation where you may have been, kind of wrestling or tussling
Yeah.
with another individual, and it's South Florida, it's hot, so
Mm-hmm.
that in itself may even exhaust you.
Mm.
There's no way that you're gonna leave someone sitting on their stomach or face down on the ground and think that that's not going to lead to some kind of respiratory issue. So 100%, we once you have the handcuffs on, it's no longer a place of saying, hey, let me try to inflict some kind of pain or trying to prevent this person from their natural course of breathing. It's all about now. Okay, now that I have you under control, we have
Mm-hmm.
you on restraints. Let's get you up. Let's dust you off, and let's get you in the car to either the police department to be processed, and then down to the main jail, or if it's a situation where that arrest can be processed right there on the scene, process the individual there, and then have the paperwork signed off, and then to the main jail. So there's nothing in our policies that would dictate or say for an officer to continue to keep an individual placed in a position where they would not be able to breathe, or to, rest on a individual in a way. And actually, our policy dictates that we will not use lateral vascular constraints on people. We don't choke people out or anything like that. That's actually prohibited in our policy for the Lauderhill Police Department.
Mm.
So it's all about care, custody, and control. So once an individual is in custody, you have to attend to them. You have to care to them. If they're telling you, "Hey, look, I'm suffering from this injury. I don't care if it's just a stubbed toe or a scraped knee. I need fire rescue. I need this." Okay, we're gonna have fire rescue come and check you out to make sure you're okay. If there's a situation where there's visible injuries to the person, we're taking you to the hospital and having you medically checked out by a doctor before you're even transported to the jail. So it's all about, at the end of the day, being fair, just, and impartial. Just because this person, may have committed a crime doesn't make them any lesser, you
Well,
know,
well,
than you or than anyone else.
here we are though. The situation that I'm presenting, this person didn't commit a crime. He was just pretty much talking to himself in a
Hmm.
little park, and he ended up dying. By the way, so they
That's terrible.
yeah, they wrestled him to the ground. He's handcuffed. He's a bigger guy. So he's face down, and one officer asks the other, is there any weight on his back or anything? And he goes, no, 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 no weight, no weight, no pressure on his back. But he's still face down, and the officer has his knee like on his shoulder or by his yeah, in the middle of his back there by his shoulder, really still restraining this guy. So he's been drinking. The guy has been drinking. He is overweight, and he's face down on the ground. When, as you guys have gone through and continuously go through your trainings with detaining and restraining, do you take those things into consideration?
100%. You have to look at, the body makeup of an individual. And again, like I said, we're trained in positional asphyxia, so we understand and we know that if someone, whether they're, of larger stature or if they're even smaller, just being in certain positions after, let's say a situation like that where there's some kind of heightened sensation of the heart or anything like that,
Mm-hmm.
you're going to run into a situation where you may have someone having respiratory issues. So you want to make sure you position them in a place where they're able to properly breathe. And again, I can't speak for another agency
Yeah.
besides the Lauderhill Police Department, but I know that myself and any other officers that I've worked with, they take that extremely serious,
Right.
because once this person is in your custody, you essentially have to render every single care, need, whatever it is for them.
Right.
So you don't even want to go down that road of not doing what you're supposed to do. And you just, like I said again, this is a job where you have to have compassion and empathy for other people. You can't just be in a place of being robotic. You have to have common sense. You have to use common sense, and you have to have compassion for other individuals. And I tell the officers that work with me every single day, I said, treat people the same way you would want to be treated if you were not in that uniform.
Right. And I think that is one of the struggles that even the community on a whole would probably have, because that person in that uniform behind that badge is seen differently when that uniform is taken off and that badge isn't present. So even the whole perception of that individual, it changes. Now, when it comes to going back to positional asphyxiation, and funny enough, this was something that I learned of talking about the Trayvon Martin death, believe it or not. And I was speaking with the consultant on the Rodney Reed case about this because he opened my eyes to a whole different view of the Trayvon Martin death. And as it relates to positional asphyxia. And it only takes a short time for someone to succumb to compression suffocation. Now you are handcuffed, your hands are restrained behind your back. Your chest cavity opens up a whole lot differently because of the position of your arms. Now you're on your stomach and your lungs operate in a restricted way. And this is how the compression suffocation works out, or positional asphyxiation. And I learned that while talking with David Fisher, consultant on the Rodney Reed case. Now, it isn't talked about a whole lot in the public scenes. And I don't know the extent of police training, but you say that quite a bit of emphasis is placed on that and recognition of that when detaining someone. So
100%.
So, if anything, we would expect zero cases of positional asphyxia coming out to the Lauderhill Police Department. But when an individual is in a situation, so here we are, now adrenaline is pumping, and this is a heightened situation, and here is a larger person resisting, physically resisting. Doesn't that kind of make it necessary to keep them in a position that they're less likely to be resistant?
Understanding what your question is, you're asking me again if it would be necessary because of the stature of a person
Yeah.
to keep them in a position laying down, face down, you're saying?
Yeah, so they're constantly resisting, and they're fighting back, and they're fighting back. A bigger person.
There's other means, especially if this person is resisting you at this place of, and they're a larger person.
Yeah.
You have other means. Like I said, there's shackles that you could use, to keep their legs from kicking. And again, getting them into that police vehicle. Our police vehicles, they have the partitions, and they also have cages on the windows.
Right.
So if you get this individual in the car,
Mm-hmm.
In a reasonable amount of time, then that's less likely that the officers are going to be injured. Because just because someone is handcuffed doesn't now mean that they're no longer a threat. Like you're saying, they can continue to resist.
Right.
So, even in that, you can still have an officer get hurt while someone is, but keeping someone in a position which may lead to their death is not going to be ideal either. So again, you have to make these decisions, and a lot of them are split-second decisions.
Mm-hmm.
They're situations, there's decisions that you're making in the heat of the moment.
Right.
So you have to, use, your good judgment and common sense when doing it. I explain it to the officers that I work with as the multiple choice answer, in the sense that there's four possible outcomes. You have best, good, and you have two answers that are completely, out of the question. So you want to eliminate those automatically. Then you have good and best. So you always want to strive for best, but sometimes, that good is maybe the highest that you can get to.
Right.
But again, you wanna get to a place of being at the best possible decision that you can make in that moment. So, again, keeping someone in a position where they're likely to have respiratory issues and or die.
Yes.
That's not going to be, sufficient. That's not going to work. That's not going to be one of the good or best answers that we can strive for. So, At that point, if you need to call for more backup, you need more officers to help you to restrain this person, to get them into a vehicle sooner, to transport them to the station where, even have another car follow that particular officer to the station to
Mm-hmm.
make sure that, that officer isn't, stopped or something happens where, this individual is able to, escape or get free or anything like that from the vehicle. And there's
Right.
only one officer present, and then getting them to the facility where they can be, placed into a holding cell. That's what you're gonna have to do. You're gonna have to, get this individual under control. And again, like I said, a lot of it is speaking and talking to the person. Even though, someone may have a mental illness, doesn't mean that you can't speak with them. You can't
Right.
talk to them. And the more you humanize the entire experience and you treat the person with respect, even though they may be acting out of character, you still have to remain professional. Because if you go down the same path that they're going down, what is going to be the end result of that?
Yeah.
It's not going to be a positive outcome, and we're here to serve and protect. So you can never deviate, and say, hey, look, you know what? I'm just going to do something, contrary to what policy says or contrary to what's right. You have to continue to be a professional at all limbs. So you have to use those resources. Use the resources. If you need additional officers, get them there. If you need to use, additional restraints, use those restraints. At some point in time, this person, that's resistant is either going to tire themselves out and or not be able to overpower, X amount of officers that are present.
But I think
And
that is sorry. I think that is where the deaths seem to occur when that person has become so exhausted in resisting that no, okay, we can take them out of this position where we have leverage, we being the police officers. And this is what I saw when I watched this video of this guy in California because it happened so quickly. You know, in a matter of 5 minutes, this guy was dead.
again, that's terrible. I'm not happy to hear that at all.
And I'm
But
not saying that they tried to kill him. It's just that
mhm.
he was resisting, and in order to maintain control of the situation, they kept him in this position. And really and truly, it just takes a matter of a couple of minutes, literally, about 2 minutes before you can end up unconscious or dead, being in this position. Flipping the script and going even further to more forceful means, deadly force, the drawing of a weapon. Going back to Dante Wright, where this officer thought that she had her taser and used her gun. As it relates to the placement of these two weapons, is there a policy in place for police officers to say, all right, so you have a taser, you have a gun, you put one here, you put one there, so you don't mix them up? Is there anything like that that happens?
And the Lauderhill Police Department, I just speak for us.
Yeah.
We we are trained to have a cross draw on the tasers. So your firearm would be on your strong side, or
Right.
your fire in hand side,
Yeah.
and then your taser would be on the opposite side. So there's little room for confusion in that particular situation.
Right. Okay.
I can't
Yeah.
speak for other agencies to say that that's the way that they operate, but I know that in our department, if you see any Lauderhill police officer,
Yes.
you'll see that their firearm is going to be on one side of their belt, and then you'll see that their taser is on the opposite side. And there's never a time where you're going to see both on the same side.
Right. And that's a part of your ongoing training, that you recognize that and you use them accordingly. Correct?
Yes, sir.
Cool. I just wanted to get that out there so that people understand where we're coming from. As it relates to the Lauderhill Police Department. Again, we can't talk about other agencies because I'm talking to someone from the Lauderhill Police Department. If you're just tuning in, welcome to the Night Shift Community and Finance Night. I have online with me Sergeant Torrance Gary of the Lauderhill Police Department. And we're talking about apprehension and the use of force. And so if you're just tuning in, NIE Radio, Island Worldwide, One Harmony Radio, WGLRO, Dusik Media Group, Oliwap Radio, ClintonLindsay.com, the Foundation Radio Network. Thank you, all of you, for supporting and carrying this broadcast. So, Sarge, when it comes to at what point do you deploy your taser in making this arrest?
Okay, so again, at our resistance level, just for anyone else who's just coming on to, the call and listening, you have passive, active, aggressive, and deadly force. So you would need to be at active resistance in order to use a taser, which is considered a non-lethal weapon.
Okay.
So based on our policy, someone who's at passive, again, that's, someone who's, peacefully protesting at a political event or in a public place, someone that's refusing to take their hands out of their pockets or behind their back, or just refusing to move at the officer's direction. You would have passive. You would not be able to use a taser on that particular individual. It would have to be at active, which is going to be that tensing, bracing, pushing, pulling, and preventing the officer from establishing control over the subject.
Mm-hmm.
So, and those are, those type of evasive movements. So at that point in time, you would need to be at least at active resistance to deploy a taser.
So here we go again. It seems to be a fine line between that active resistance and that deadly force resistance. So when an individual,
I know you got the tough questions for me. Go ahead.
Yeah, you see, and I'm not trying to point any fingers when it comes to police and paint with a broad brush. I'm really trying to make sure to make this as specific as possible, and not try to create any animosity between public and police. When it comes to the use of the taser when someone is already handcuffed, how does that work?
In a situation where someone is handcuffed.
Yeah.
I would venture to see how, I don't know, you'd have to kind of, I guess, explain to me a situation or kind of give me some kind of scenario as to what you're asking, because in my opinion, if someone is handcuffed, again, like I said, it's not that they cannot be a threat anymore, but the use of a taser at that point, I wouldn't think that would be a likely use of response from an officer. Physical control in that particular situation should be justified and be enough. I mean, even if someone is running away from you and if they're handcuffed, if you tase them, they're more than likely going to fall face forward.
Mm-hmm.
And they're probably going to, hurt themselves significantly. So, running after them and or, physically controlling them in that situation should be enough to get that person under control. I can't tell you of any instances that I've seen personally where someone has been tased while being handcuffed. Yeah. I haven't seen it.
Hey, I'm just making sure, that is covered, because for those that are listening in later on, possibly on one of the podcasts or on YouTube and commenting, these things come up. I can't say that I've seen all the videos that are out there of questionable police interactions. There is the case of people running away from the police and getting shot. No weapons, just pretty much just running away. Don't want to be arrested, running away, and end up being shot and killed. And it's of course there's the Philando Castile situation that pretty much everybody knows about. Sitting in his car and getting shot. And there was a time when there was shooting after shooting after shooting, with police involved shootings, and the individuals are running away. So these are not in handcuffs. They're not under control by the police officer. Clearly, so that they can run away, they wiggled out of it and started running away. Does that warrant deadly force at that point? Or is it just a matter of they're not sure, the officer is not sure if the person is running to get a weapon, or if the person did have a weapon but didn't brandish it at the time and is running away and could possibly use such weapon?
Again, you have to be presented with that deadly force situation, and or a place, like I said, again, based upon the individual's stature, or even maybe, let's say, an aggressive situation can turn into a deadly force situation for you to be at deadly force. There's no way that you could justify using deadly force in a situation where there's active resistance or passive resistance. And like I said, even aggressive leading up to deadly force, because someone can go from being passive to deadly force. Doesn't have to necessarily continue through those different steps. Someone could have their hands in their pocket and take out their pocket and present a gun. So they just went from passive all the way to deadly force. So the officer has to be able to establish and articulate, again, how they reach this deadly force situation. And if they can't articulate that, then there's no way that that's going to be justified. So on all means, you have to be able to articulate, what were the circumstances that were going on in this particular incident that made you feel that your life or someone else's life was in imminent danger.
Right.
And or serious bodily harm was imminent without you using this level of force. Someone simply running away from an officer is definitely not going to be a place where deadly force should be applied. Now, if this person is, let's say, with a firearm and, they're, presented it to the officer, and then now they're running towards, let's say, a child or something like that, the officer can perceive that, hey, this person is, going to, attack this child or, attack this other member of the public, and they've already presented this weapon and have this propensity for violence. That could change the situation. But simply running away from an officer is not going to be something that you can articulate to say that, hey, this is deadly force.
Funny you should say that. There is a situation recently where there was a girl that had a knife that was attacking someone. The cops were called. There was, I think it was a domestic dispute. Cops called. They came out to the scene. Girl came out and saw two individuals fighting. One of them had a knife. And the cop shot the girl and killed her.
I'm familiar with that particular incident.
Right, the one with a knife. And I'm looking at this and I'm like, whoa, that's a tough call. Because you can't say that you're going to go for a taser at this point when here is someone with a weapon attacking someone else. So now your job is to protect life, and here is a life that is in danger.
Correct. That was a very tough decision.
Wait.
Very tough decision.
Okay. Yeah, so it was a really tough call on this officer's part, and I'm gonna switch connectors here 1 second. It was a really tough call on this officer's part, but he had to think quickly. and in doing so, he had to take a life. And people have this notion of saying, because they see it on TV, he could have shot her in the leg or shot her in the shoulder or something, shot the knife out of her hand. Like people are posing targets for you to practice on. When in truth and in fact, the only thing you have to shoot at is the largest part being displayed.
That's correct.
And it sounds, I know it's how it sounds, but the reality of it all is, one, the officers involved are human too, and two, in a situation like this one, where you have an individual wielding a knife, potentially to take the life of another, a decision has to be made, and it's in this case it's a split decision. And that was really rough. When you've, I don't know if you can personally answer this question and separate yourself from the Lauderhill Police Department. If you can't, that's fine. But when you first saw that video, or you first came across that particular situation, what was your take?
Again, very, very hard to comment on it because I know that it's still ongoing, and there's, I'm sure, more facts are going to come out about that case. So
Mm-hmm.
for me to give, my opinion on it, I would be, unjust in doing so.
Okay.
But again, like I said, just a hard decision for any officer, any person to make, where it's, especially from my understanding, there were two juveniles involved in that
Yes.
particular situation where you have to take, the life of a child. And, if you didn't, make that decision, then the life of another child can be taken, so just an extremely, extremely hard situation, for that particular officer to have dealt with. And again, like I said, just, my opinion on it would be, unjust and unfounded because there's still more, I'm sure, to come about that particular case because it's still ongoing. But when I first saw it, I just thought of it as a tragedy and a tragic moment,
Mm.
Where this particular officer was in the middle of that and had to make, the decision that he made.
Right.
And in either situation, well, I'm sorry, not situation, but either decision that he would have made, potentially a life could have been lost.
Right.
So, just a very, very, very tough
Including
situation.
his.
Very tough situation.
Yeah, because even if he were to try to physically restrain this girl, he could end up being fatally wounded.
You're 100% right about that as well.
So just for people to have an understanding of really and truly what it is when you guys put on your uniforms and head out of your homes in the morning, you also want to get back home.
That's true.
Ultimately, the goal is to get back to your family and your life. So it's all good and well when we think that, as police officers, you're upholding the law, so you should know the law and what it entails and such. But at the end of the day, you're humans. Just like everybody else, you're human. And in whatever professional capacity you serve, you don't know everything there is to know about that job that you're doing. So
you got to continue to learn and continue to grow.
exactly.
If you stop learning, you stop growing, then you've already failed. So again, that's why when we
Right.
first started the conversation, I tell you, I encourage, the officers that work with me to research every single day. And of course, you want to have this knowledge on the top of your head at all times, but sometimes you may have to go back and refer.
Mm-hmm.
But if it means, taking that extra second to refer to the law and make sure that you're operating and doing everything the right way, I would rather that than, you making a mistake with someone's freedom, with somebody's life, because that's nothing, to play with. That's not a game. So, you have to take this job extremely serious, and it matures you a lot. I mean, even if you come into this job
Yeah.
young, the things that you see and the things that, you go through on a daily basis, and, they change you. They change your outlook on the world,
Mm-hmm.
so you know, a lot of the stuff that we see and things that we have to do in our profession, a lot of other individuals will probably not be able to handle some of that type of pressure. But we have to still remain professional. We still have to have that compassionate side. And again, like you said, we think about making it home to our families and our homes and our loved ones every single time that we put on that uniform and walk out. But you still have to put that service, first, and put the community first. And I believe that if you do that, you'll make it in your career and be successful. It's just that you gotta keep pushing forward. You gotta keep going, and hopefully things like this, us talking in these open platforms, lessen some of the situations that we've been seeing on the TV and on social media and on the news outlets of, officers being involved in shootings, of, individuals being, killed. Because at the end of the day, I don't think that that's, the aim of anybody who puts on a gun and a badge when
Mm-hmm.
they walk out of their house
But even the
to be
way
involved in
individuals are
that.
detained, even simply that, just the way individuals are detained, you know, it having, in my opinion, having these discussions really help to mitigate how that happens. You know,
Correct.
it it leaves you guys in the police department accountable to what you present, and it educates the community in what to expect, one, and their role in this, because with everything there's an equal and opposite reaction.
Correct.
And so, you comply with instructions, and everything should flow smoothly, even if you're in objection to it.
Correct. And there's avenues and means that if you felt that you were something was not done professionally or was unjust, there's professional standards within our agency
Mm-hmm.
and the internal affairs where you can make a formal complaint and or present any allegations if you feel that there's something that's been handled inappropriately or you were dealt with inappropriate by an officer.
Right.
Every division, they have supervisors. So if
Yes.
there's a particular situation where you're on scene and you need to speak to a supervisor, you can always request one and say, hey, look, I need a sergeant here, I need a lieutenant here, and so forth. Our chief, she's very open, and she is very welcoming to the community to voice their concerns, as
Yeah.
well as our commissioners and our city manager.
Right.
So if there's and they're a phone call or email away. And again, with camera phones, and we even have body worn cameras ourselves,
Mm-hmm.
that provides that extra layer of accountability, that if there is something that's not on the up and up, it's going to be revealed.
Right.
So you can rest assured, in Lauderhill, that if there's an issue, that it's going to be dealt with, and dealt with appropriately and professionally.
You know, people have a tendency to look at police officers across the board. It doesn't really matter where in the country they are, or even where in the world, and paint with a broad brush. And I want people to understand, those listening to this live broadcast or the podcast or any other recordings, that I believe that there are good officers in each police department trying to make a difference, trying to police the right way. I have been fortunate enough to have interactions with those from the Lauderhill Police Department that this has been their goal. This has been the way that they seem to operate. And the community has proof of that. The community reflects that sentiment. And I do believe that the next community walk that you guys have in Lauderhill, which is the 26th, if my memory serves me correctly. I plan to be, Wednesday the 26th.
Yes, of May, correct.
Yes. I plan to be there for this one.
All right. Well, we look forward to having you there too.
So yeah, I'll get to talk with some of the people in the community and see what they have to say about the Lauderhill Police Department and how they operate in their community. And it is good to have this kind of exchange. It is good to have this level of exposure, because it says, yes, one, yes, we want to work with our community, and two, the community is willing to work with us. And the more we have that, then the more we have the service part coming into play with police officers, because the community is effectively protecting itself.
Yes, sir. I agree with you.
Sarge, I truly appreciate love that you could take this time out to hang out with us and to share with us and to impart some of your knowledge with us. Big ups to the chief, big ups to Lieutenant Santiago for putting this connection together. Making this connection. I hope he's getting some rest now, because you guys have been pretty busy.
Yes, we have. Yes, we have.
And not pointing fingers at the community at all. But things happen. And as a way of your service, you guys have been pretty busy. And speaking with Lieutenant Santiago earlier, I got wind of some of that. So, big ups to you guys. Thank you for your service.
Thank you. I appreciate you, and thank you for having me on here to
Not a
speak
problem.
and again providing this platform for myself and the Lauderhill Police Department, to connect with the community. I greatly appreciate you.
It's my pleasure and privilege. Listen, you get some rest, you take care, you stay safe.
All right, you do the same and stay safe.
Thank you.
All righty. Good night.
All right, have a great night. Ladies and gentlemen, Sergeant Torrance Gary from the Lauderhill Police Department. I am once again truly grateful to the Lauderhill Police Department and Chief Stanley, and the great big ups to Chief Stanley and Constance Stanley and the great job that she is doing in the Lauderhill Police Department. If any of you guys had any questions that I didn't touch on, or any comments that you want to share, feel free. Go visit the podcast or check out the YouTube and comment there. One comment here that Bobby had in the stew pot is he spent 6 years. He did 6 years as an auxiliary police officer, and he said he enjoyed his service. It was all about helping and listening, and I believe for the greater part of their jobs, that this is what a lot of police officers do. They help and they listen, and the arrests part and what is involved in the parts that we get on the news, where officer involved shooting, or here you have someone dying while being detained, the in custody deaths. It raised a lot of questions, but to be jumping to conclusions, it's not beneficial for anybody. So when we get to have these open discussions, everyone listening, you have an opportunity to ask a question, to raise a comment, to raise a concern. And even if not on this platform, to visit your local police department and say, I think you guys are doing a great job. Or to say, I don't like how you guys are operating because this has been my experience. But to open up that line of communication, I believe it is really important. And to keep those lines of communication open, that's how relationships grow. Just like how you and your partner, you and your best friend, you and your family members, this growth in your relationship happens with effective communicating, which means that you're actively listening and you're expressing yourself using your words. And now you have this communication going on. Communication is a two-way street because as you communicate out, you get communication coming in, information going out and coming in, and the lines of communication are open. And that's what we're doing. That's what we're trying to do when we do this. So, podcast is everywhere. The Night Shift with DJ Kevin Stew. You can search for it online. YouTube, The Night Shift with DJ Kevin Stew. And of course, on this platform, kevinstew.com, you have access to previous broadcasts, including this one, which will be up by morning. So, you can come back to it and ask questions later on. I can forward the questions to the police department, to the chief, to the lieutenant, to the sergeant. We can get answers. If I don't have the answers, which most times I probably don't, but I can ask, I can forward those questions, and I can get the answers for you. So don't be afraid. And if you're in the Lauderhill community, just go on over to the police department and ask them the question yourself. That's an option too, because they're there to serve as well as to protect. Yeah? Cool. So as we wrap up this broadcast in a nice little bow, we get to do a little bit of musical therapy as we get out of here. And we kick off this therapy with David Powell, track called Life Hard. Heights of Great Men.
But still I not break. Sit back and watch the world spin, or take a look at everything that's happening. Hey, you know them have win a race where them set up, but you know we are going. Life hard, but we still a live it up. No say it up, but we still a face it up. Life hard, but we still a live it up. We not give up the fight, can't give up the fight. Life hard, but we still a live it up. No say it up, but we still a face it up. Life hard, but we still a live it up. We not give up the fight. Heights of great men. Say life hard, but me going. Enough time to see, mommy cry from me growing. No time to smile, cause you know what's happening. I pick up on the road and take on the beast master. I fi stay under control. I fi have that mindset, stay true to your goal. I fi have that drive, the hunger in your soul. You alone on the highway, but you have to pay the toll, hey. Cause you buck up in a hidden out there. I fi stay strong in a Gideon. I fi have a heart of a lion. Stay strong in a Zion. I'm more than a conqueror, yeah. From J.A. Thank God I've got with the few of them are real, yeah. Brother and sister, them tougher than steel, yeah. I one link so you know the thing seal, yeah. I one link so you know the thing real. Life hard, but we still a live it up. No say it up, but we still a fist it up, down. Life hard, but we still a live it up. We not give up the fight, can't give up the fight. Life hard, but we still a live it up. No say it up, but we still a face it up, down. Life hard, but we still a live it up. We not give up the fight. Heights of great men. They call me want me daddy, proud of me. So Jaja beg you spread the love all over me. Cause when me take a trip right down to memory lane, me buck up in a sorrow and pain. Hey, while you rise to see the sun, who you love or pull you down, trying to discredit the works you have done. Selector, keep it on the beat. Tell them God
sleep. Cause none of them are over now, I move like sheep. I was some people are free, no work and pure gettings. I'm on another level, yo, a different settings, man.
I want to thank each and every one of you for tuning in. Thank you for the support. As we continue to grow this broadcast, inviting you to share to a friend, tell somebody about it. Call a friend, an enemy, friends of your friends, friends of enemy, enemies of your friends. Tell everybody.
Now give up the fight, can't give up the fight. Life hard, but we still a live it up. No say it rough, but we still a face it up.
The son of David Powell, it's called Heights of Great Men. Well, actually it's called Life Hard, Heights of Great Men. This is JQ. A track called Ghetto Morals.
When you're living the ghetto to be degraded seems so normal. Don't underestimate my ghetto morals. Encourage intellectual statistics from the ghetto. I'm artistic, painting a brighter picture for my future. Now go make the ghetto when me come from define me. Now go make the system deprive me. The flowers that grows in the ghetto knows more about survival than the ones from the meadow. United we stand, but divided we can fall. What is wrong with this economy and your ideologies? Read your mind of racial segregation. Read your mind of racial segregation. Real birds are like a almime, so me rhyme so prolific. I'm highly cultivated, so now watch the image. Me not gonna make the ghetto when me come from define me. Not gonna make the system deprive me. When you're living the ghetto to be degraded seems so normal. Don't underestimate my ghetto morals. Encourage intellectual statistics from the ghetto. I'm artistic, paint a brighter picture for my future. Whoa. Yeah. My ghetto morals. When you're living the ghetto to be degraded seems so normal. Don't underestimate my ghetto morals. Encourage intellectual statistics from the ghetto. I'm artistic, painting a brighter picture.
10 minutes to the top of the hour.
Not because my born in the ghetto, me not there, so me
The sound of JQ.
belongs to the one.
It's called Ghetto Morals.
Here, a hustler in the ghetto, that is what I got to be to fight the odds and free myself.
Reminding you to come tomorrow. It's Healthy Love Night.
The ghetto to be degraded seems so normal. Don't underestimate my ghetto.
And tomorrow we'll be looking at women's health.
Intellectual statistics from the ghetto, I'm artistic,
So you don't want to miss that one.
picture for my future.
It happens right here, same time, same place, kevinstew.com, 10 p.m. Eastern. This is on a Nikki Blaze. 10 minutes to the top of the hour. 10 more minutes before I get on out of here. It's called Lost in Illusion.
I see them love. Oh yes, I see them. Lost in illusion. Lost in illusion. I see them love. Oh yes, I see them. Lost in delusion. And now they reside in the state of confusion. Why is it that my race remains poor? My race sitting on the jail floors. My race fighting to knock down doors. Same race they stole from across the shore. My race that built this great nation. Still trapped on my plantation. I see them love. Oh yes, I see them. Lost in illusion. Lost in illusion. I see them love. Oh yes, I see them. Lost in delusion. And now they reside in a state of confusion. Rwanda, Haiti, down in
At 7 minutes to the top of the hour, I can tell you this. I'll be going to sleep, not waking up in just a few. But that's only because it's the end of my day.
I wanna tell you now. I see the love.
Thank you all once again.
Lost in illusion, yeah.
You know, as we wrap up tonight, this morning in some places, I do want to encourage you to look out for members of your community. To remember, your community is not just the development that you live in, but it spreads far and wide. Those that you pass on the bus, on the plane, the boat, or the train, whether you walk, ride, or drive, these are members of your community. Do something good for one of them today, because you never know who's going to do something good for you tomorrow. My name is DJ Kevin Stew, so I like to do it to you, for you, and with you every Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday. KevinStew.com, 10 p.m. Eastern.
In a state of confusion, I see them love. Oh yes, I see them.
The track is called Lost in Illusion.
I see.
She goes by the name Nikki Blaze. This is Miss Annette Brissett talking about some beautiful people.
Why do you fight us so? Yeah, you. When we're only here to multiply and purify this earth. You take a man and you judge us all. But put yourself in my place. Wanna see if you stand up tall. We are beautiful people, all coming from beautiful man. Yeah, we are beautiful people, all coming from creation. We are from a place where there is lots of pretty faces and smiles, and everyone's in a while we come across desperate times. You are no better, as we are no worse. Why every little thing you point your finger first? And we are beautiful people, all coming from a beautiful man. We are what we are, beautiful people, all coming from creation. We have the black, the white, the yellow, the red, and everything on between. Everything in life have its meaning, boy. Beautiful. We have the fat one, the short one, the skinny one, the tall, and everything after, and everything in life have its meaning, oh, creation. Beautiful people, all coming from beautiful man.
This is where I bounce out and leave you all for the night. This is Marcia J. Ball.
The struggles of life face us each day.
The track is called Time Change.
Gotta take this journey all the way. We've gotta face reality today for you.
Once again, thank you for your support.
Come on.
Good morning, good afternoon, good day to you wherever you are in the world from right here in South Florida. I bid you a good night.
And drop out of this race, no matter.
Until tomorrow, when we do healthy love, you take care until then, okay?
Start changing before our face. We can't drop out of this race, no matter how long, no matter how hard, we gotta survive. We have daughters, we have sons, so much work left to be done. What you believe you will achieve. So let's get together, everyone. Join hands and hearts together, take a stand. Big truth and rights to every man. Times are changing before our face. We can't drop out of this race. No matter how long, no matter how hard, we gotta survive. Times are changing before our face. We can't drop out of this race. No matter how long, no matter how hard, we gotta survive.
Policy Media Group, innovative streaming and recording, has done it again. A new way to get your business in full view of your neighborhood consumer through AdShare TV. It's available in your neighborhood today. It's easy. Just call us 754-999-6020. Become a host today and place a TV monitor in a strategic location so it's easy to see. Get a 1-minute video ad or longer that plays anywhere in our network. Can't be a host? No problem. For a few dollars, we'll run your 30-second video ad. A host can run announcement specials like buy one get one free or discount ads. Let's turn your flyers into a 30-second video with music or a voiceover, or let us create and run your video ad with a spokesperson. Take advantage of our early enrollment discount. Join us today. Your ad will be seen at least 30 times per day in your AdShare TV neighborhood. It's easy. Just call us 754-999-6020. AdShare TV, part of Policy Media Group.
Greetings and salutations, one and all. You're invited to tune in to the Night Shift with DJ Kevin Stew. It airs on Mondays with Community and Finance, Tuesdays with Healthy Love, and Wednesdays with Real Talk from 10 p.m. to midnight Eastern Time. Come spend some time interacting in the stew pot where we keep things bubbling and wind down in musical therapy. The Night Shift with DJ Kevin Stew is on kevinstew.com, where you're encouraged to have acceptance through enlightenment.